adjourn. We need a motion and a second for that. But more importantly, it's the recommendations that we're going, that's where the motion and a second and an approval will be necessary. We'll be making recommendations to council, 3 to 5. And that's really where the most important element of the motion is. That's where the most importance is. So there on this really simple page about Robert's Rules of Order, at the very bottom, there's a quick reference chart of motions, made motions, amending motions, research, recesses, and adjournments. It's very simple. And the chair of the meeting will be conducting this, and I'll be happy to work with that person, whoever it is, in getting through this whole thing. Really not that difficult. And finally, there is rules for village meetings, which I would have to say pretty much mimic Robert's Rules of Order. Any questions? All right. Item on the agenda, officer selection. It's important to appoint a chair to conduct the meetings and vice chair to conduct the meetings of the chair's absence. My personal suggestion would be that Trustee Jones and Trustee Hageman not be the chair because they're on council, and I think it would be better to have a resident doing it. We guys are residents, but to have a non-council member be the chair and vice chair. It's up to you, of course, and if you would like to discuss it now, I think that would be fine.
Well, I agree that I don't want to be the chair, being on council.
And you and I discussed that.
And we discussed that, and we really would.
We'd rather have it you
Good
guys.
idea if it was a resident that is not on council to be the chair, just because. And the whole purpose of this is to get as much input as we can from residents, and to have a council member directing it, I think is
Yeah,
sort of contrary.
that's
to
not what we're looking for. Yeah, we're looking
what
for
we hope to do.
influx of ideas and stuff from you guys. We're just here as members, so to speak. However, I will state that neither one of us will keep quiet.
I'll second that.
I mean, we don't want to force anybody to take it or something like that, if they don't want it, obviously, but,
Anybody want to volunteer?
we're looking for someone who would be willing to take it on. I don't think it's gonna be, a huge burden or more burdensome than anybody on the committee. You're just basically gonna be running the meetings is the role, more than anything else, so,
So who would handle minutes in a situation like that?
The staff will do that. You have to end that. You don't have to worry about that.
Yeah.
You don't have to worry about that portion of it, or noticing the meetings or anything of that nature. That's something that we'll do.
Okay.
And in between meetings, if we have to talk with whoever the chair or the vice chair is, and we formulate agendas and come up with answer any questions or address any concerns as we go along. So I mean, we'll be here to help whoever the chairperson is. Just how to conduct a meeting, and what needs a motion and what doesn't, and we'll remind you if there's anything that needs to be discussed. We will arrange to have the guests in advance of the meeting, whether it's HRC or the village attorney or Bill Patton, the village treasurer. We'll make all that arrangement as well. So you won't be flying by yourself. We'll be co-pilots.
Bill, any interest?
And I can put my name forward if you like, as long as I've got a backup.
Well, I'd like to have a motion in a second for that.
I would move for Bill Bowles. I hope I said that right.
I'll second that.
Is that you?
Yes.
Okay, there's a motion on the floor. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Mr. Gomez? Welcome to the chair.
Be careful what you ask.
Well, need a vice chair, you know, in terms of,
Right.
need to handle that.
So the next item of business would be to appoint a vice chair.
Any volunteers?
I don't mind being a vice chair.
Perfect. Is there a motion?
I will move, Jim. I got your last name. We'll get there.
Just remember.
You got
Is there a second?
That might be a conflict of interest.
it.
I'd second.
Okay, there's a motion and second on the floor. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none. All those approved, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Welcome to the vice chairmanship. Wonderful.
Business card?
So we do have, the next item would be member comments, but I would expect that people would start asking about the next steps. So I think maybe I'm just gonna say that we should talk about the next steps now. So our next meeting is in 2 weeks. Is there, my recommendation would be that we would have the engineers, 2 or 3 of them here, to go through the rest of us again. And to get into, to dive into some of the details. Does that sound like a good idea?
Yeah.
I've actually sat through some of the presentations at the council meetings, and I think it's a really, really good idea.
Okay, all right.
Can I
Yes,
just kind of step back, I know, I think it was discussed in the previous council meetings, but can we just like really lock down the objective of the committee? What we really want to achieve,
sure.
because that kind of sets in motion what you should be discussing, this, right?
So I
Because
was.
if you bring the engineers in, I have no problem bringing engineers in, I have both engineers.
Really?
Work on it every day.
But what is a part of our goal to question their estimates or what the content, or what is our objective of the whole committee here, the advisory committee?
Did you happen to print this?
I
The
did
page?
print it.
Okay. So the nitty gritty of it would be point number 3. The committee would be charged with bringing to village council not less than 3 and not more than 5 proposals regarding the financing of village road reconstruction and timelines for each financing proposal.
So that's the main goal.
Yeah.
So it's financing, just finding financing for what the engineers have already proposed.
Well, I wouldn't have an issue with you asking them some more detailed questions. If anybody has concerns about some of those numbers.
Okay. I just want to understand what
Right.
is within the bounds of scope of this advisory committee. Because if we can question their estimates as part of the financing, then I agree it would be a good idea to bring the engineers in.
I don't know that that should last for the next several months.
No.
But I think that one, at least in a meeting or 2, it's probably a good idea.
Yeah.
Just so that everyone's comfortable with the recommendation once we get there. And keep in mind that a recommendation might be, there's talk about this, it's not in stone, of course, is to put a ballot proposal on the ballot that would raise a millage. And I think you all want to be comfortable with whatever that might be. And if it takes a little bit of explanation on the engineering end, I don't see that as an issue. At least, I wouldn't, something can always go too far, but I don't see an issue with that. Does anybody else?
No, I'd like to talk to the engineering firm about some of the assumptions that they've made.
Okay.
And, the language that's used in their proposal is that they're willing to change something and I'm willing to re-inspect something.
Okay.
So I'd just like to see how far that's moving ahead.
Or to your point, the difference between 8 million and 14 million, just to understand,
Or maybe even less.
or less, right? But just understand what the range of options could be. So as, sorry to deep dive this, but, so there, I read the proposals that you sent out, Ken, and there was a lot of different options, right? So we have the freedom to explore options outside of that secondary sentence.
So how I looked at this, and again, coming from the village, that I looked at this committee could come up with at one end says, we do absolutely nothing. We just take the roads as they are, and as we go, we find a pothole here, we fill that. So in other words, we don't do anything. To the point of, over the next 3 years, we do what we need to do to gather the money to completely redo the roads up to the spec that HRC would suggest that they should be. So that's, to me, how the gamut that I look at it. I look at it as kind of what we said there, that number one, how are we gonna do this? But to the extent of what do we want to be done? The second thing is, what's the time frame? Is it gonna be over 20 years? Is it gonna be over 2 years? Again, that's what this committee, I think, is to put together. I want a free, Kurt and I both agree with, we're looking at a free flow of ideas from these guys out here as well as the people here. And at times, we definitely want to open it up to what these guys have to say. There's some expertise there that we don't know about yet, but maybe they've got some ideas that we don't know. And that's kind of the way I'm looking at this committee. What have you got? I don't care how outlandish it is, but let's hear it. It may not work, it may work. I don't know. I'm just here to help gather ideas and put forth what I think this committee can put together.
So it's within the time frame of like the span of this committee, right, which is 2024.
Yeah, and I think I'm more than confident we can come up with something. And
Just for informational purposes, the reason for the May 24th deadline is that would then give time for these proposals to go forth to the council, which would then decide which one they want to follow, and that would still have enough time to put any millage proposals on November's ballots. If you go past the May deadline, it gets harder and harder to do that. And while we could go, you could have a special election for, proposal that costs money to do a special election, which nobody wants to do that. So that's the reason for the deadline. I'm with my fellow trustee here. I mean, while I understand we want to follow Robert's Rules of Order and village meeting rules and so on, I'm hoping that this is a little less formal than our typical council meetings, which have to be run in order to make sure we get the agenda done. I'm looking for a little bit more back and forth in terms of like discussing ideas and, if a resident has an idea, being able to like ask a question or two about it, stuff like that. But on the other hand, we do have to be done by May 24th, so.
What would be helpful is just to get a bit more information. One being some historical context. I'm really curious to understand how we ended up here in this situation, where we're trying to figure out financing the roads, given that we all know that the lifespan of these roads is 20 or 30 years. So, we could have done something else over time. So I'm just curious to see what was the thinking or how we ended up here. And then two, it would be very helpful to get a summary of everything the village has looked at. So whether that's at the federal level in terms of grants and different sources of funding, all the way down to state and other programs, just so that we're not covering ground that's already been explored.
Sure. Maybe, Ken, is that something that you can talk about next meeting, the whole idea of what kind of like looking we've done for grant? We actually have gotten a couple of really small grants, but nothing major in terms of that. And just if you want, I'll just give you a quick minute or two from. I think I've been on the board 6 years, which I think is probably the longest tenure anybody's there. So the board has been ever since I've been there, and I'm sure for years before that, has been out of your tax dollars, taking $150,000 a year and putting it in a road fund. There are several different road funds. I'm not sure how much of this you want to know, but I'll ramble on and you can tell me to shut up. And so there's, for years, what was happening is that there's a major road fund and a local road fund. The major road fund for our community is, Bingham Road. And that's the only road in that, that fund covers. There's a certain dollar amount that's in there. And then there's the minor road fund, and that's all the other public roads. Those dollars are there for them. 2 or 3 years ago, maybe 3 or 4 years ago, someone on the council, or maybe it was our then treasurer, came up with the idea that, well, if you put the money in those funds, it has to be used for just the roads in those funds. And so instead of putting the money
things come up as required. It's not like there's a plan tied to that 150,000 every single year.
No, it is not. And there's, I believe the number is about $3 million. It's in the newsletter, actually.
Yeah.
Exact number. What we have saved up.
Yeah.
Ready to
Because,
go.
Hubble,
Hubble Rock and Clark is
Clark,
HRC. I'm sorry, I
They will-
keep just throwing them out there as HRC,
HRC.
but yeah.
I'm saying, you know how to build a fund, right?
Yeah, but that's why I'm trying to understand the mechanics of what was done here. So HRC comes to you every year and makes recommendations on what you should be doing with that fund.
No,
We
this is-
can-
Not really. I
They,
mean,
they come when we call them.
right. I mean, I don't really think that we've done a lot of what you would call preventive maintenance over the past several
I
years.
was just trying to get to what Mason asked, is like, what's the plan? What was your overall plan over years to maintain roads, just like you maintain a house?
I don't really, well, I'm just, me personally, this is, you know, not like the council, but I don't know that there really was a plan. There was, the plan was save $150,000 a year, and then when we get to, you know, then we'll have that money at least available so that when we need to do the roads again, we'll have a fund. I don't think that there was a plan in terms of like, well, we're gonna do preventive maintenance this year, or we're gonna do, you know, we're gonna. That was the plan, save $150,000 a year.
Well, hold on, and wait, just, but one moment. Our files are full of past year plans that have been actually implemented. So this project that I'm referring to that happened in 2021, that occurs almost on a year or every other year basis. It just hasn't occurred yet since 2021 is the last time we did something like that. And if you look at the newsletter, page 2, it has the year since the last resurfacing. That'll kind of give you a basic idea of when that last road, each road was last resurfaced. That doesn't mean that we don't do that doesn't mean that the sort of larger scale maintenance plans don't occur. I think it's number 3. Tab number 3.
Well, the other topic I would like to bring up with the engineers, maybe you're curious too, is the last time we did the roads, I was around. And somehow we got the word from residents that they wanted a country lane look to the roads, not black asphalt, you know. And so to get that look, they had to add like 50% gravel to the asphalt. And there's a theory, I heard somebody talking about this, that the roads don't last as long when you use 50% gravel. You need more sticky stuff, you know, and I'd just like to make sure we cover that issue with the engineering.
I'm sure that's a question they would be able to answer.
Because longevity is kind of,
Right.
you're investing.
Right. Incidentally, just HRC, Hubble Rock and Clark advises this village on engineering matters, as well as Village of Beverly Hills, Village of Franklin, and lots of other entities as well. So so when we couple these projects with Beverly Hills in the past, it's with their oversight, and I would say we would get more, generally speaking, we would get more bang for the buck that way.
Are we going beyond where we need to be as far as coming up with a time frame and how are we gonna pay for this? I mean, I understand where you're coming from, what have we done and so forth. Again, I go back to what I stated earlier in that I look at this as how are we gonna pay for this time frame? What do we want to pay for? Maybe that's where you're going, is what are we paying for to get there? As I said, we could do to the point of, we've got this 150,000 that we put in every year. I think we know now that's not nearly enough, was, as you said, everything has exponentially gone up. So that may be one more thing the council has to look at too, in that instead of being, I'm getting off topic, shame on me. Instead of 150, maybe we need to go to 350, 500, I don't know. But again, that money is not there. So part of this, what this committee is, how are we gonna get that money to do what we need to do?
So that's why reviewing what the village has already looked at is important, but also understanding what is our starting point, right? So there's there's cash in different places, as I understand it, restricted cash and unrestricted
Yeah.
cash, right? So understanding that, let's say we're trying to solve for the 14 million, what really are we working for, right?
Right.
And when, right? So
Right, exactly.
we don't need
Yeah,
to do all the roads in 1 year, right?
we do not.
Yeah.
Unless we decide to.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
I think it's a good point because, you know, if we're gonna find some funding, what are we gonna spend it on?
Yes. Absolutely.
Just to clarify, HRC is a engineering consulting company. They're not the ultimate construction.
No, that would get bid out, and they do not run a road
Yeah.
construction firm. Right, they don't really have, and they would be overseeing.
Right.
But they don't actually do
But
the
they're
work
going to bid out
themselves.
the job.
Right,
Right.
absolutely.
They
I mean-
assist in the bid process.
What's that?
They assist in running the bid process.
Right. I mean, you have to bid it out. It's just a public law. And of a project of that size.
Well, they write the statement of work for the bid,
Yeah.
and then they actually conduct the bid.
Did I see you have a question? Or comment? Or was just, okay. All right.
And
I'm
then-
sorry, go ahead.
and They
You
do
were.
the project, I mean, they write the statement of work to go out, and they need the statement of work to go for bid.
Mhm.
And then they go out and bid it to multiple suppliers, right? And then
Multiples,
they
yes.
do the project management,
Mhm.
and they get paid for all of that.
Correct.
And I assume they're also on site to make sure you get what you're paying for.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yes, they would be on site.
They're liable for the quality of the job. Who's-
They're liable for the quality of the job.
Mhm.
Mm,
I have to look at the legal elements of that, but it's them or the construction company.
Well,
Road
okay.
construction company.
How you determine the quality?
That's why you have them.
Is that issue, yeah.
That's why you have them. They're there to protect your interests, to make
Right.
sure the contractor's delivering.
That's it.
'Cause most of us can't look at stuff falling out of a
Mm.
truck and know what it is.
When the funding gets, when the contracts are written, the checks are written, does the village write the check to the supplier? Or do they write it to Hubble and Roth and Clark for everything?
I'm not sure offhand.
Because that would determine who's responsible for quality. Because if it's written to Hubble, Roth, and Clark, and then they subcontract the asphalt suppliers, you hold them accountable for the quality.
So we can certainly ask Hubble Roth and Clark some of these questions. I don't have answers to all of these things right now, but they will be here in 2 weeks. So we talked about it. So if we can get them to answer some of these questions. They've done project management for lots of communities and lots of entities for a long time.
So going back to what you referred to here, the roads were originally paved in 1984. And then it looks like they were resurfaced about 20 to 25 years after that, right?
It depends, well, it's right there. It's
Yeah.
by road. Some of them are longer than others.
Yeah,
It's the third column there.
so was that resurfacing paid for at the time by this fund that was put away?
There's never been a millage increase for any of that. Is that what you're, there's never been,
Yeah,
like,
I'm
there's
just
never been a
trying to-
ballot proposal for roads or
Kathy,
anything of
you
that
wanna
nature here.
Yeah, just because if we turn into a village and we, these are, people are gonna ask questions like, well, we did it before, why are we doing it now?
Typically, the village would save. And roughly every other year would determine projects based upon consultation with engineers and bid out, and then with council approval, bid out that project.
If I remember correctly, I think the village was able to have enough money to do the majority of that. Just like. So at that point, if I'm correct, village could cover the cost?
Yes.
Yeah. So the village could have enough money in the coffers to be able to do it. Whereas now, because everything has gotten so expensive, it would be really difficult.
But even then, these roads were done over 10 years, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
that was, the last one was redone
Yeah.
9 years ago.
We started in 2003. 2013.
I'm sorry, what?
The first road was done in 2003.
Last resurfacing?
Yeah.
The last resurfacing that you mean the oldest one or the
oldest
last one?
No, the oldest one, as in. Yeah,
Okay.
the oldest.
Right, well, there's one here that's never been redone, so you wanna count that?
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Yeah, Timber Trail is.
Yeah,
It looks like it.
Yeah,
yeah, that's true.
That's a single lane road.
and if I recall, that road was never supposed to be done.
That's right. If you're looking for a country road, that would be it.
Yeah.
It sounds like that a lot of people have a lot of questions with the engineers is for the next meeting, do we just want to devote that exclusively to the engineers? Or are there other things that we think we should talk about at the next meeting?
I think the basis of what we're gonna be funding needs to be clarified, and yeah, I think the engineers need to tell us.
I think that might be a nice way to go, yeah.
And
Yes,
Joe Lavity, State Report, 40+ years. The roads were originally paved, as was mentioned, 1984. Okay. The HRC reference, can you tell, that the presentation that they previously made, the PowerPoint, was that in a study session or was that in the council meeting?
the last one? The
Yeah, it
last
was
two-
back in August, September,
The last
something like
two
that.
were done at council meetings.
Okay,
Yeah.
and the only reason I bring that up, if anybody wanted to go ahead, based on the video, you know,
Right.
wager through the hour or so in advance of them coming in, it may give them some background information.
Good point. So on the website where you have where we posted volunteer opportunities and included the form that you all filled out. There's also reference to some of these documents are linked. And there's also the meeting that Joe just referred to uploaded to that space as well. And at minute 18 is where, I've watched it more than once. At minute 18 is where the road presentation by HRC begins. And if you would like to, that's a good point. Thank you, Joe. If you would like to watch that in advance of them being here, probably a good idea. And if you can't find the link, just call me and I'll send it right to you. Yeah. Email it to you. All right, I think we have our marching orders then. We will have HRC, a Hubble Roth and Clark representatives here to answer any questions and all questions that the committee will have regarding their estimates and perhaps a little more. We'll do that next meeting. Just for the record, that meeting is on Valentine's Day,
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh.
February 14th at 6:30, Wednesday, 6:30.
One question.
Yes.
I know administration is pursuing grant possibilities.
Mhm.
Is there a timeline for that? You will know by X date whether any of that is going to work?
Well, that's a kind of a floating deadline. I don't want to call it a deadline, but it's a floating bullseye. And I'll say it this way. Typically speaking, the entities that award grants want shovel-ready projects. They don't want to, they're not, usually state, feds, county, they don't just give you some money and say, go ahead and spend it when you're ready to do it. They want shovel-ready project, or they want a timeline of when it's at least gonna get started and get finished.
Okay.
Usually grants have a window when the project has to be completed, and there are parameters, you have to report on that. There is, in addition to that, I will say this too, and I don't want to discourage anybody, but typically speaking, grants are awarded to communities that are somewhat needy.
Yes.
Not necessarily communities that have a millage rate of 9. And I don't mean to say we're not gonna pursue them, we are.
Right,
And I've been talking with HRs, Hubble, Roth and Clark about that. There's a specific one, it's $250,000 that we are that we're lining up to seek from the state. But again, we weren't gonna file paperwork on that. We're not gonna attempt to apply for that until we have something a little more concrete. Again, they want shovel-ready projects.
okay.
They don't want to just let something sit. That's general. That's not every grant at all times, but that's generally what I have experienced.
When you say shovel ready, would these be like shovel ready projects? These actually have scope, kind of a scope here. Do each one of these have timelines?
They don't have timelines. No, they do not.
I mean, when I say timeline, I meant like a block timeline. If we were to execute like this page here,
Mhm.
do we know how long it would take?
I do not know that.
But Hubble Roth might.
But I would, any one page is basically one road, right? And I would say that would probably take, I'm gonna guess that it's probably gonna be, one road would be less than a month.
And the last time they did it, they combined some roads too, so they didn't just do one road, it was, you know,
Right.
two or
Right.
three.
Right, they've, actually, HRC has addressed that whole concept of maybe doing sections of the village, season by season.
Mhm.
Not just, they wouldn't do Bristol Lane before they did Sacred Court. They would do Sacred Court first, work out. For an example.
Question.
Yes,
Hi, my name is Gail Summers and I'm on Bingham Lane. But one thing that was not addressed in the HRC presentation, but it kind of occurred to me as a bit of a puzzle, and it's something for the engineers to reflect on. If you look at that table in the newsletter that was sent, there's only a 3-year difference between when Bristol Lane was resurfaced and Bingham Lane was resurfaced. Bingham Lane, that resurfacing occurred in 2008 versus 2005 for Bristol Lane. And yet, if you look at these two roads, it's night and day. And what I wonder about is, were the same techniques used in each case? Because one has held up beautifully and the other seems to be falling apart. And how does what was done back then compare with what HRC is proposing to do now? Because we want to make sure that we get a quality product that will last, 20, 30 years.
you said Bristol Lane and Bingham Lane comparison.
Yes.
Okay,
I think there was another complication, it's a long time ago, but there was another complication that Bingham Road was falling into the ravine, right? Kathy, when there was, we had to put some kind of reinforcement so that the road wasn't continuing.
You're
to
talking
fall.
Bingham Road,
yeah.
Bingham Road. Not Bingham Lane.
Oh,
He said road.
All right, hold on, guys.
Yeah, he said road. We're talking
I-
about Bingham.
Yes,
This
I-
is where I don't,
no,
hold
I'm
on,
talking
hold on,
about
everybody.
Bingham
This
Lane.
is where this is where it's really important that we have one conversation at a time, not two here or one here and one here. We just need to do one at a time. This is where the rules of meeting rules are really important. So if you guys could address what you were doing, and then we can hear from you two guys. Go ahead.
I was trying to explain why there was a gap between those two road construction attempts. I think there was a problem with the road surface, tilting into the ravine.
No, we were talking about Bingham Lane. You're talking about Bingham Road.
Mhm.
So there's a 3-year difference in repair reconstruction between Bristol and Bingham Lane,
Oh,
not
okay.
Bingham Road.
Thanks.
All right, gentlemen, go ahead.
So they have, in the assessment here, it has the ratings for all the roads.
Mhm.
Bingham Lane is rated a 4. And Bristol Lane, is that what you're comparing to, Bristol Lane and Bingham Lane?
Yes.
So Bingham Lane is rated a 4 on a scale of 10, 1 being the worst, 10 being the best. And Bristol Lane is rated between a 3 and a 4. So it's rated worse. Is that what you were referring to? Is that Bristol Lane is worse than
Yes.
Lane?
Yeah.
Okay,
Or were you talking visually?
Well, I'm talking visually, because I've driven down both roads and walked both roads, and there's just a dramatic difference between them.
Yeah, I think the engineers would agree with you that Bristol Road is worse because if you look at their projections, they're not even projecting the intermediate fix for Bristol Road. They're saying that's not even like doable. They're saying you have to go right to the major reconstruction. So I think maybe you should be a road engineer or something. I think they would agree with you on that.
A lot of it had to do too, I think, the drainage, that it's much more difficult to drain Bristol Lane than it is Bingham Road.
But not Bingham Lane.
Or,
Bingham Lane is a tough one. to
I'm
do.
sorry, yeah, Bingham Road.
We have standing water all the time. And now it's covering my sump pump release and my French drain is covered so deep.
I had just a separate question if we're ready to move on. And I haven't talked about this with Ken or Yev, but does anybody have expertise on like how to do a spreadsheet? I mean, just conceptually, what I'm thinking about is let's just talk about an example where we don't do anything to the roads. Like, we have figures that sort of tell us, it's gonna be $9 million for all the roads. And we know that we're putting in $150,000 a year, and we can figure out how much we get from the state per year. But then we spend so much per year doing potholes, and the Hubble Roth told us at one of the meetings that the estimated increase for each year we put it off is 4%. And I think that's pretty conservative.
Yeah.
But so like, it'd be nice to have a sheet that showed like, if we do nothing 1 year out, we'll be owed, the total shortfall that we have is X number of dollars. If it's 2 years out, it's X plus whatever. Does anybody, because I couldn't do that if my life depended on it. Do we have anybody that could do that kind of work in our group or anywhere? Because I think we're gonna need that to like, people are gonna wanna know like how much it costs.
sure, I can actually model that, it's
Okay.
easy to do.
All right, great.
But to your point, I think it goes back to this question of what is the priority, right? So the amount of money versus how much you're collecting per year is a huge difference. So we need to agree, what roads are you prioritizing? And I think it's gonna come down to a combination of short-term solutions, which may be in the form of, let's use cash that we have, let's maybe raise the millage rate, let's look at a number of other things. And then what is the longer-term solution to be able to do all the roads? And that may lead us into grants and things that just take more time. Maybe some borrowing, right? There's a lot of infrastructure financing available that may put that $150,000 a year to better use than given what we have ahead of us right now.
The essence of this committee.
Yep.
Good point. Good point. Does anybody out there have anything else to say? All right, Mr. Chair.
Well,
We need a crystal ball.
I know what we're doing for the next meeting. Mr. Gomez, if you would like to give me a call between now and then to discuss agenda, that's fine. Beyond that, I guess the next item on the agenda would just simply be member comments. And we'll just go around the room. We'll start with you, Mr. Scotty.
No further comments.
Mr. Burley.
So looking at the roads here, we have quite a few private roads, right? I can
Yes.
see, and there's the condos usually, they have a lot of high density of people, right? I remember listening to one of the meetings where there was quite a few people that live on those roads, right? So
Mhm.
I'm just a wild guess that they're not gonna be enthused about a millage increase. Do we have a representative on this road committee for any of those private roads or?
We have 3 people that
You
are here.
So how are those things funded?
How are the private roads funded?
Mhm.
There's a fund. I mean, we,
The homeowners.
homeowners
People who live
association.
there.
HOA kicks in, how much do they kick in a year?
I mean, depends on the road, right? But I mean, in our case, we're doing, I don't know, 4,800 a year per household.
That's,
But it's not that many households
Yeah,
either.
yeah, we're only, I guess, 11 households.
oh, I was thinking more like the big complex.
Yeah.
No, it's pretty stiff.
Did you have something further to say about that?
No, I just wanted to make sure my comment was that I think that would be important to this committee to consider that.
I have written a memo to that effect.
That's all.
Thank you. Mr. Hageman? Trustee Hageman? Sorry.
No problem. Yeah, I pretty much said everything I wanted to say. Pretty much got it covered.
All right. Trustee Jones?
I think your comment is very, very on point, and it's like one of my biggest concerns about this whole thing is, I don't wanna spend all this time and come up with a proposal and have it fail. And, it's slightly more than 50% of the residents in the community live on private roads. And that's a concern, and we have to come up with something that's gonna get 51% of the vote. Hopefully, a lot more than that.
Thank you. Mr. Goins?
Well, I think we're off to a good cooperative start. We're supporting each other's opinions, so it's a good step forward.
Thank you. Renee?
I couldn't agree more. I think we can't ignore the political part of this. And I think, if I bring any experience to this, it could be useful. I think there are ways to make this palatable to the people who are on the private roads. And I hope that I can be useful in that aspect, but I think we've got to address it. It's a political reality. We can work our brains out here and all the down tubes. So.
Thank you. Mr. McAlexander?
Just to say, I'm glad to be part of it. I think it is an important work. I think I told maybe Lisa, when we first started looking at houses here, we were looking a lot at Birmingham. I kept looking at my wife saying, I don't understand why they pay so many taxes and the roads are so dreadful. And they still are.
That's right.
So I think there's, like I said, I think there's lots of ways to achieve this, and look forward to being part of it.
Thank you. All right, thank you everyone for being here. If we didn't get this recorded, we will get the next one done. Yes.
It's been recording.
Okay.
I got
oh,
it
great.
working. It was just a little bit late,
All
so
right, thank you.
sadly, all the introductions were not part of the video, but maybe we can do them again for the engineers in 2 weeks.
That's a good idea. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. We need a motion to adjourn. Second. Any further discussion? All in favor? Okay, thank you very much. We are adjourned at 7:37.